Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. This time we're really getting into something that, well, I think we all struggle with, and that's how to tell the real deal from a really good fake,
Oh, yeah. How can you tell a visionary from a con artist?
especially in journalism, where the line between truth and self-promotion can be pretty thin.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the guy we're looking at today is right on that line, Jason Leopold. Is he fighting for transparency in government, or is he just someone who bends the rules so he gets ahead?
He's been called a FOIA terrorist,
Right.
but also a hero of journalism.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, we've got a whole pile of articles and court documents and interviews all about Leopold's career. And what we're going to try to do is sort this all out. Is he really trying to make the world a better place, or is this all just some kind of game for him?
Right.
So to get started, what exactly is this FOIA thing he's known for?
The Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, is basically a tool that anyone can use, journalists, researchers, even just regular people, to ask for government documents. The idea is to keep things open, to hold people in power accountable.
So how does Leopold use it?
Well, he's made FOIA his whole thing. Thousands of requests, lawsuits, he never stops. He even says that the government hides things just to hide them, not because there's any real danger.
Huh.
Yeah.
Didn't he use it to get those Hillary Clinton emails released?
He did, but he's done a lot more than that. Like, he found out that the Air Force was using religious stuff, even references to Jesus and an ex-Nazi, in their ethics training for people who work with nuclear missiles, and that got the whole program shut down.
Seriously. Wow. That really does sound like someone who wants to change things. But it can't all be sunshine and roses for him, right?
You're right, there have been some bumps along the way. Back in 2006, he wrote a story saying Karl Rove was about to be indicted, all based on a source who turned out to be completely bogus.
Ouch.
Yeah, almost ended his career right there. People were saying he just made stuff up. It really shows you how important it is to double-check your sources and not just trust what anonymous people tell you.
So what happened? Did he just disappear after that?
No, actually, it seems like that's when he really went all in on this FOIA journalism, almost like he was trying to make up for what happened, to prove he could be really careful and get things right, kind of a redemption story.
Interesting. So is he more cautious now?
Well, that's where things get even more complicated. Jump ahead to 2019, and he's in the middle of another big controversy, this time with BuzzFeed. He and another reporter said that Trump told Michael Cohen to lie to Congress, but then Robert Mueller's office, the special counsel, said they hadn't seen any evidence of that, and that really hurt Leopold's credibility.
So wait a minute. Is he reckless or is he careful? It's hard to tell.
I know, right? That's the whole thing. On one hand, he's been incredibly successful at finding things the government wanted to keep secret. But on the other hand, there are these huge mistakes, and it feels like maybe he's pushing things too far, even if it is for the public good.
Yeah, I can see why people have such strong opinions about him. But you can't ignore what he's done. Those stories about the Air Force, about Clinton, those actually change things.
That's true. So the question for our listeners is this: what's more important here? Does his dedication to getting information out there outweigh all the controversy around him? Is he ultimately doing good? Keep that in mind as we dig deeper into his career.
Okay, so it seems like Leopold definitely likes to stir the pot a little. But what about how he actually does things? What does this FOIA-focused journalism really look like?
It's pretty wild, actually. One thing that really stands out is just how many requests he makes. Like, think about it. Anyone can file a FOIA request, but most people probably only do a couple, maybe, if they're really digging into something.
Yeah.
Leopold has filed thousands over the years. It's
Yeah.
almost like he's trying to overload the system.
So is that like his strategy, just flood the government with so many requests that they slip up?
Could be. Government agencies only have so many people to go through all these requests, and it can get pretty overwhelming for them to handle.
Right.
It might force them to accidentally let something slip or at least stall long enough that Leopold gets a head start.
And we know he's not afraid to sue either, right? He's
Yeah.
sued the government over FOIA denials a bunch of times.
Right. And that's another part of his MO that makes people wonder, is it okay to use the courts to pressure the government like that? Or does it go too far? These lawsuits cost a lot of money and take a lot of time for everyone involved.
I can see how some people would see him as a pain and others as a champion for transparency. Really comes down to how you look at it.
Exactly. And that's what makes Leopold so interesting to study. Where's the line between being persistent and just being annoying?
Okay, but say, for a minute, that the way he does things is, legitimate. What can we learn from him? Is there anything regular people can use from his approach to hold their own governments accountable.
Absolutely. The biggest takeaway is persistence. FOIA is a powerful tool, but you have to be patient and be ready to fight for the information you want. You might get denied, you might have to appeal, you might even need to get a lawyer involved.
So it's not just sending a request and then waiting for the information to magically appear.
Definitely not. It's about being strategic, knowing what you're looking for, going after the right agencies, and writing your request so that you have the best chance of getting what you need.
So there's a skill to it.
Oh, yeah. You got to be as specific as possible, explain why you need it, and be ready to push back if you think they're trying to hide something from you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of work. Even for professional journalists like Leopold. How do you even know where to begin? And what kind of information can people realistically expect to get through FOIA?
That's a great question. FOIA covers a ton of government information, but there are limits. Like, you can't use it to get someone's personal info or classified national security stuff or trade secrets. So what can you get? You can request things like government reports, emails between officials, minutes from meetings, contracts that were given to companies, even internal memos and policy documents. It really depends on what you're trying to find out.
So let's say someone listening wants to know how their local government is spending their tax money. Could they use FOIA for that?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
They need to figure out which department or agency handles that money and then ask for the right documents, like budget reports, spending records, contracts they've given out.
And if they get denied, they can appeal.
Exactly. And there are places that can help people through the FOIA process. Organizations like the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press or the ACLU, they offer guidance and legal help.
That's good to know. So even if you're not a big-time journalist like Leopold, you can still use FOIA to make sure those in power are doing what they're supposed to.
Absolutely. It's a tool for everybody, not just the pros. And that's what Leopold's career really shows us, the power of knowing things in a democracy. But, as we've seen, there's always another side to that.
Yeah. The chance for misuse, ethical stuff, the risk of getting things wrong. It's a tough balance.
And that balance is especially shaky when we're talking about sensitive political stuff, like the BuzzFeed thing.
Right. Speaking of which, let's go back to that story. I'm still trying to understand exactly what happened and why it was such a big deal for Leopold. Can you take us through it?
Sure. It all started in January 2019 when Leopold and Anthony Cormier, his colleague at BuzzFeed, published a story saying that President Trump had told Michael Cohen.
So where does this all leave Leopold? It's been quite a ride, hasn't it? Big scoops, big controversies, you know.
Yeah, it's like he's always on this edge between amazing journalism and maybe going too far.
And that BuzzFeed thing, whether it was accurate or not, I bet it made some people in the media think twice about working with him.
Oh, for sure. It definitely made people question his judgment and his sources, even those who generally support what he's trying to do.
But he's still going strong. He's still publishing, winning awards. You could say he's changed how some people do investigative journalism.
There's no question he's had an impact. He's revealed things that might have stayed hidden, and I think he's inspired a whole new group of journalists to use FOIA, to hold those in power accountable.
So back to our original question. Visionary or just a guy who's good at playing the game?
That's the big one, isn't it? And I don't think it's an easy answer. He's a complicated guy, good qualities, and some issues, too.
I guess that's what makes him so interesting to talk about. He doesn't fit into a neat box. He makes us think about, what journalism should be, about government secrets, and even our own responsibility as citizens to stay informed and engaged.
Exactly. And in a way, maybe that's why he's so effective. He keeps people guessing. He forces us to look at these uncomfortable truths about power, accountability, and how we get information.
So for our listeners, after this deep dive into Jason Leopold's world, where do we end up? What are the big takeaways?
I think the most important thing is to remember that there are rarely simple answers when you're looking at someone like Leopold. It's easy to label people hero or villain, but it's usually way more complicated than that.
It's about seeing the whole picture, the good, the bad, what drives them, what they achieve. And in the end, it's up to each person to decide what they think.
Right. We've tried to give you a balanced view of Leopold, but we also want you to keep exploring.
Read his work, read what people say about him, and form your own opinion. Is he a good force in journalism or someone who just uses the system for himself?
And more broadly, think about what investigative journalism means for us. How far is too far in the search for truth? How do we balance the need for transparency with things like national security or privacy?
Big questions for all of us in a democracy.
And as we try to understand this world where information is everywhere, it's more important than ever to think critically, question everything, and keep searching for those hidden truths.
That's all for our deep dive into the world of Jason Leopold. We hope you found it informative, something to think about, maybe even a little bit challenging.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep challenging what you think you know, and keep looking for those hidden truths that shape our world.